The anticipation for Metroid Dread is reaching a fever pitch. A game once rumored 15 years ago is finally coming out in roughly 2 months. Nintendo's doing their part to hype up the adventure with their Metroid Dread reports, which have been showing up on their website roughly twice a month since the announcement. Volume 4 recently went up, and with that came some confirmation of theorized directions for the story. When the actually living, moving Chozo showed up in the reveal trailer, it seemed like Dread was going to follow up on the 100% ending for Metroid Samus Returns. And, well, yeah, it is. Nintendo went out of their way to mention how Metroid 2 and Samus Returns include descriptions of Chozo civilization, making them fundamental to the overarching story of the 2D Metroid series. There's even a Glimpse of Dread video that showcases a wealth of exciting scenes, including some essentially lifted from Samus Returns' secret ending that shows off how the Chozo that were on SR-388, the planet from Metroid 2, created the Metroid to combat the X-Parasite, and how one Chozo went rogue against the others. It's likely that's the Chozo who shows up in Dread, doing whatever bad things that Birdman might do. Nintendo hasn't really said that much directly on living Chozo, but they've hinted at it quite a bit in the Dread hype cycle. Nintendo clearly states the Chozo, while previously dominant in the universe, are all but wiped away now. A few Chozo are still out there, but they, as Nintendo says, mostly try to avoid attention. Maybe one of them is on planet ZDR. Maybe one of them is up to no good. Once again, Nintendo specifically says there are various implications to be found in the Chozo on ZDR. What could those implications be? Let's quickly break down what was in that Glimpse of Dread video. At the beginning of the trailer, you can hear a computerized voice, and while it's a little garbled, here's what we've been able to pick out. It seems pretty safe to assume that everything we're seeing here is from very early in the game. We already know that the bulk of Metroid Dread focuses on Samus escaping from the depths of planet ZDR, but in this video it looks like we're seeing her arrival. We see her ship, the same one from Metroid Fusion, land on the surface, and Samus exit in a different version of her suit than we saw in the initial reveal. This version still shows signs of healing from the events of Metroid Fusion, but it also features a more traditional orange coloring seen throughout the series. Samus descends down an elevator and we get a quick glimpse of her face. We see a Chozo statue wearing a cloak and power suit similar to those seen in the memories of Samus Returns. Chozo hieroglyphics appear to show the same events depicted in the memories from Samus Returns as well, in which a Chozo appears to have overthrown the rest of the Chozo leadership. It is worth noting that the difference in appearance here could indicate a warrior-class uprising against the Chozo elders. Unfortunately, we don't have a cipher for this variant of the Chozo language, so we can't read the text on the wall. We see what is presumably that same Chozo from the reveal trailer, and while it could, and maybe probably is, the rogue Chozo from Samus Returns, its blue robes could also imply that this is one of the elders that escaped the massacre. It's hard to say for sure. It is worth noting that it appears to be bowing and greeting, so not a particularly aggressive move from what we can see. Next we see a series of scenes from the Chozo memories from Samus Returns, along with some key moments from the opening of Metroid Fusion. These go by very quickly, but the last image we see is of the SAX, the X-Parasite that infected and copied Samus in Metroid Fusion. Seemingly in reaction to this, we see Samus's eyes dilate and her hand tense, with some sort of strange energy flowing around it. It's possible that whatever Samus is seeing here has ties directly to the X-Parasite. That's it for the Glimpse of Dread video. It's short, but it gives us a lot to think about. Aside from that video, Dread Report Volume 4 is essentially a recap of the series, but there are some fun and interesting nuggets nestled within each game recap. The Metroid 2 stuff was already covered, as that's mostly focused on the Chozo aspect. Metroid 1 and its remake Zero Mission are referenced with a call out to how Zero Mission's stealth sequence was a little bit of a precursor to the Emmy robots in Dread. The section on Super Metroid notes something that hasn't been a given in Metroid games. Dread seems to be made with sequence breaking in mind. That was something a little harder to do in Samus Returns and Fusion, but was staple for Super Metroid and Zero Mission. Just remember, the developers are actively encouraging you to sequence break, which means it's not cheating, so do what you must, Samus. The last recap is about Metroid Fusion, the adventure that directly precedes Dread. While almost 20 years have passed since Fusion for us, it's likely not that long for Samus. Her suit is different here because of what happened in Fusion. Adam, Samus's computer AI and former commanding officer, also first appears in Fusion. It's an integral part of the story, even down to how the SA-X is part of the game. SA-X, according to the developers, is the inspiration for the Emmy robots. That's the big stuff from Dread Report Volume 4, but there was some neat stuff in the third volume that came out in mid-July. It reviews several key parts of the Metroid series and offers some hints as to what's going on in Dread. If you've played Metroid Fusion, then you're familiar with how Samus was attacked by the X-Parasite and was injected with a Metroid vaccine to help her survive. That affected her trademark power suit, giving it a more organic look. According to the developers of Dread, Samus's suit is slowly returning to the original power suit look, as can be seen in the footage we've seen in the game. Metroids are in the name of the game, and they're also a core tenet of the series. However, the Metroid are extinct as of the end of Super Metroid. Samus murdered the overwhelming majority of them in Metroid 2, and the only survivor was the baby, who met its end at the close of Super Metroid by saving Samus's life. However, the developers begged the question of how the titular species could factor into the story of Dread. Could the Metroid really be gone? Or is the very existence of a Metroid vaccine an indication that a malevolent force could bring them back? As you might know from our Chozo lore video, the reason the Metroid exist is because of the Chozo. They made the Metroid to stop the X-Parasite. Samus took out the X-Parasite in the events of Fusion, but maybe they're not all gone? In fact, we already know that that's the inciting incident for the start of Dread. Samus gets a transmission about the X still being around. Naturally, she goes into action and heads for planet ZDR to get to the bottom of this. And we know she gets to the bottom of somewhere because she starts at the bottom of planet ZDR. What happens next? Well, we don't know, but there are only 2 months to go. This video was made possible by our generous supporters on Patreon. Did you know that Nintendo World Report is funded directly by fans like you? When you support Nintendo World Report on Patreon, you get immediate access to multiple exclusive podcasts every month, exclusive Discord channels, an early look at select content, and more, all for as little as $1 a month. Check out patreon.com/NWR for all the details.